Welcome back, fellow scientists. So I apologize for my attitude in the last video. Teachers are humans too. I'm sure you knew that, but you didn't actually fully realize that. Teachers get down, teachers get discouraged. It's okay. So I apologize for that. I'm wearing a bright shirt. I'm wearing a bright tie today. So I'm gonna strive to be upbeat because we know that God is still on the throne, and we know that our ultimate hope, our ultimate citizenship is in heaven, and He's in control. So we are going to carry on in our usual fine style. All right. So hopefully you have taken the quiz over the lymphatic system, and that's kind of where we're going to leave that. We'll probably have another quiz, a fill in the blank quiz, on Monday. More about that on LMS RunWeb. But now I want to give you just some very brief notes over the immune system. And the immune system, it's going to take us a couple lectures to get through the immune system. And then after that, we'll have another test. And I actually figured out how to grade the test and how to give you feedback on the test. So there will be test corrections on this upcoming test. So anyways, these notes should be on OneNote, a blank copy of these notes. So go ahead and go there if you haven't already, and maybe use OneNote as your platform as you're watching this video, or if you want to print them out and have a hard copy of your notes or whatnot, that's totally fine. But today we are talking about the immune system, and I realize I forgot to choose a color, so we'll choose a nice bright. Oh yeah, here we go. I like that green. That's a good one. Okay, so we're talking about the immune system. Right? So basically, the immune system is you, right, or your cell versus bacteria and viruses. There's the word virus right there. I was realizing as I was making this PowerPoint that you really need to know the difference between bacteria and between viruses. And I'm just kind of assuming that that's some general background knowledge that you have. But then as I was going through this, I was like, oh, but they might not know it. So I came up with a solution to that. That's your homework for today, right? I'll put an assignment on LMS RunWeb. All I need you to do is give me research and list 5 differences between bacteria and viruses. So it doesn't need to be in paragraph form. It could just be in bullet point form. Try to cite your sources. If it's just one source for everything, that's totally fine. If you want to even pause the video, do that now so that as you're going through the video, you can kind of have a better understanding of what we're going to talk about. That's great. If you want to watch the video and then go back and do that, that's totally fine. But that's going to be our homework assignment for today: are 5 differences between bacteria and viruses, and that'll help you understand the rest of this lecture a little bit better, hopefully. So as we think about the immune system is broken up into 2 categories: the innate or the non-specific defense mechanism. So this is a defense against absolutely anything and everything. We're going to talk about this today. And then the adaptive or the specific immune system, that's going to be like the next 2 or 3 videos. We're not going to get into that today. So today we're just going to look at the first and second lines of defense. So here we go. First line of defense, we already talked about it, is the integumentary system, right? So this is a physical barrier. Right, so literally, like bacteria, like hit your skin and then bounce off. Right, they can't get into those living cells because remember, all of these cells up here, right? We got the stratum granulosum and the stratum corneum and all this stuff in the epidermis. Most of those are dead cells, and so bacteria and viruses, they can't infect dead cells. All these are dead. Right, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing for us. That's the barrier. That's the wall. That's the defense mechanism. Also, we have these sebaceous glands right here, which you guys remember, obviously. So these make secretions of oil, but then they also secrete a substance. The oil has a low pH, so it's acidic, right? Anything less than 7 is an acid. So viruses, bacteria, they don't like that low pH. And then they also secrete chemicals that are toxic to bacteria. Chemicals toxic to bacteria. Perfect. So that's the skin. That's kind of the very first of the first of defense. Next, we have our mucous membranes, right? You guys remember that these are things that line all body cavities that are open to the exterior. So the examples, by the way, these diagrams are straight out of your book. So the examples that they give are respiratory, digestive, urinary, and reproductive tracts, right? So a couple different things going on here. The mucus, right? It's kind of in the mouth and nose and throat and lungs and stuff like that. That's a sticky substance that kind of traps foreign invaders. So mucus, literally like it's the blob. It like sucks you in and it traps the bacteria. So it traps invaders. Of course, the stomach, right down here, right? That's acidic. That's supposed to be a C, HCl. So any bacteria, any viruses that we eat, right? If there's not a lot of them, then they can go to the stomach, and the stomach is acidic, and so that kind of handles that. Reproductive tracts, so urethra, right, and vagina is acidic, right? Urine is acidic. Vaginal secretions are acidic, so urine and vagina is acidic. And we are, by the way, going to do the reproductive system as one of our units, even though the whole entire school year is remote education. So yeah, just kind of prepare yourselves for that. Get used to that idea. And then last of our first line of defense would be tears and saliva. So tears, I really don't want to write out saliva, so we'll just say spit. Right, so tears and spit, so they have this chemical in them called lysozyme. And if you took AP biology, you know that to lyse means to explode or to destroy a cell. So lysozyme is an enzyme that explodes or destroys bacterial cells. So lysozyme destroys bacteria. All right, perfect. So that's our first line of defense. Moving on, hopefully. There we go. So second line of defense, we're going to start with this idea of inflammation. So inflammation, 5 cardinal signs of inflammation. Your book talks about this, so we got to address it in our notes. Number 1, the area hurts, right? Number 2, if you touch the area, like it feels hot to the touch. And it's not like the forehead, not like a fever, right? But it's that specific area. Number 3, redness, right? Number 4, swelling. And then number 5, if the inflammation is in a joint, like fingers or elbow or knee or something like that, usually due to the swelling, it's a loss of function. You can't move it as well. It's like you don't have your full and entire range of motion. So the way that inflammation works is that you get some kind of protrusion or some kind of puncture through the epidermis down into the dermis, and these injured cells uh, these release chemicals, right? So injured cells release chemicals. And then what these chemicals do is they basically call these macrophages or these phagocytes, same synonyms, right? Different words that mean the same thing, same thing. So if you remember, if you took AP biology or all the way back to freshman year biology, when we were talking about the organelles of the cell, I showed you a video called The Inner Life of a Cell, where the white blood cells just kind of rolling along, and then the little things like on the blood vessel wall and on the white blood cell, they talk to each other, and then all the stuff goes on inside, and then at the end of the video the thing kind of like flattens out and it kind of slips in between the blood vessel cells, and it goes out to fight the infection. The reason why it's doing that is because of these chemicals right here that are basically calling that white blood cell, that phagocyte, that macrophage, to come and to help out with this wound, with this infection, with this bacteria here, right? So it's, yeah, big words here, but that's okay. So we would say that white blood cells exhibit positive chemotaxis. The chemicals are calling the white blood cells to that area to come and deal with an infection. So once they get there, then, right, this is the bad guy, this is the antigen, right? Or I guess we could say this is the bacteria, and then the bacteria has antigens, the cell surface proteins on its surface, right? And so then the macrophage or the phagocyte, right? It recognizes that and it engulfs, right? So this is endocytosis, right? It engulfs this poor little bacteria. And then the lysosome, remember lysosomes, they digest things, they digest old and broken organelles. But then they can also be used to like kill bad guy cells if the lysosome is in a macrophage or phagocyte, right? And so then it kills the cells, right? And then we get rid of the cell debris. So this is exocytosis. Right, it's all really fascinating stuff. So basically, another non-specific line of defense is inflammation. Chemicals are released. They call these macrophages. Macrophages just kind of eat up all the bacteria that are around there and then get rid of it. And so that is one of our second lines of defense. All right, I think this is the last slide. We'll see. So another second line of defense is called a natural killer cell. So these are basically just they're kind of like police officers. They're just kind of like basically circulating around the body. And what they do, they don't attack bacterial cells, but they're just kind of checking out like our own cells. And they are known to target cells that are infected with viruses. So viral infected cells. And then they are also known to target cells that are cancerous, that are dividing too rapidly. So cancer cells. Right. The way they do that normally, right? So this would be normal. Normal, if the cell is a normal, healthy cell and it doesn't have a virus and the DNA isn't out of control and isn't replicating, it would have this protein right here. And then if the natural killer cell is just kind of going around and it comes in contact with this protein, the natural killer cell isn't going to do anything. Right? It's not gonna kill this target cell. Now, if this target cell has a virus, or if the DNA has gone all wackadoo and it's sick and it recognizes that it's sick, it'll make this protein and it'll express this protein on the surface of its membrane, and that'll activate the natural killer cell, and the natural killer cell will then go ahead and do its job, and it will kill that target cell. So why do we still have cancer? Why do we still have viruses? Well, because sometimes the natural killer cells just get overwhelmed. They can deal with little stuff. They can't deal with like a really serious like lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of cells. So that's a second line of defense. Another second line of defense is something called complement proteins. So let's see. Is there? Oh yeah, here we go. So complement proteins. So basically, we have our antibodies, right, that are attached to these antigens right here. Antigens. So this is a bacteria, right? And bacteria have specific antigens, specific cell surface proteins. So this is antigen, right? And then the antibodies attach, and then the antibodies call in this complement protein right here, and then the complement protein makes these other proteins that make a pore into the bacteria. If you remember all the way back again from regular biology, osmosis, right, and diffusion. So water goes to where there are more solutes. So if there's an opening in here, there's lots more stuff inside the bacteria than outside the bacteria. So water is going to flood in. So we have H2O right? Flooding in, and that's just like overfilling a water balloon. That's going to be like, right? Here's our word again. The influx of water causes cell lysis. So that's another second line of defense. And then another, I know there's a lot of them. Well, Mr. Leo, why in the world do we get sick then? Well, because all these things don't always work perfectly, right? Oh, and by the way, I should also point out this was against viruses, or sorry, this one, the complement was against bacteria, right? This one was against viruses, right? The last one was against bacteria, right? The macrophages. And so we're kind of seeing different strategies that the body has for dealing with viruses versus bacteria, right? So we started out with bacteria, and then the natural killer cells are against the virus and cancer, and then the complement proteins are against the bacteria, right? Now this one we're going back, so these are against the viruses. So we're talking about interferon, right, which is a group of chemicals. So basically, we have our healthy cell right here that gets invaded by a virus, but it knows that it's invaded by a virus. So it makes these chemicals called interferons, right? So then these chemicals, these interferons, they're going to be secreted and they're going to go over to neighboring cells and they're going to be like, hey, the Johnsons over here, they're under attack. So you guys better be ready because you're next, right? Because it just knows. And so then when the Johnsons, when their house like totally explodes and like bad guys then proliferate out into the neighborhood, so then the bad guys go to the next house, but the next house has already been warned that there's bad guys in the neighborhood, and so they're like, nah, that there's no way that that's happening, and so then they kill the virus, and then it works, right? We can't take our analogy all the way to completion because that would just be a little bit morbid, but that's the idea of interferon and how that works, how that protects against viral infections. So that's interferon. And then the last one is the fever, which some people regard as a specific, some people regard as a non-specific. We'll call it non-specific. This is our last little item in our second line of defense. So fever, as we all know, oops, sorry, here, we'll just erase that. Right, fever equals, our definition of fever is increased body temperature, right? Kind of the accepted body temperature for humans is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, or, oops, erase that, 37 degrees Celsius, right? So if the body senses an infection, or sorry, I'll back up. So the reason why I started that out totally wrong. The reason why the body will increase its temperature if it senses an invasion is because enzymes don't work well at higher temperatures. If you guys remember from regular biology, AP biology, they get denatured, right? Remember there's that specific 3D shape, and then if you increase temperature or if you change acid base or whatnot, or if you change even the salt level, right, then they just totally get discombobulated and they get denatured. So a fever leads to denaturing of enzymes, right? And the hope is that the bacterial enzymes get denatured first, and then our enzymes will stay intact long enough to kill all the bacteria, and then we can go back down to normal, right? Another thing that a fever does is it makes iron and zinc go to the liver and kind of be stored in the liver. So Fe, iron, right, and zinc, Zn, stored in the liver or go to liver. Bacteria need iron and zinc to reproduce. And so if we limit the availability of that, then that's a good thing for us, bad thing for them. And then last but not least, another thing that the fever does is it increases the basic metabolic rate. So it increases the metabolic rate of the cells. So things that are warmer work better and move faster. And so cells are better at repairing themselves and defending themselves. And it just basically speeds everything up. All right, so now I kind of put the cart before the horse, but that's okay. So that's everything that a fever does. Now, how do we know, or how does our body know to make a fever? Well, the part of our brain that's responsible for regulating body temperature is called our hypothalamus, right? Yes, hypothalamus. So our hypothalamus increases our body temperature in response to white blood cells, and macrophages releasing chemicals called pyrogens, Pyrogens. There you go. So white blood cells, macrophages, they sense an invasion. They encounter bacteria. They're like, oh, this is serious. They release pyrogens. Pyrogens goes to the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus bumps up the body temperature, makes us have a fever. Fever then denatures bacteria, enzymes, hopefully not our enzymes, right? So fevers are really only useful for fighting bacteria. They're not really useful for fighting viruses. Sometimes our body doesn't know the difference and it just says, well, we'll just give it a fever and that'll be good, right? So denatures the bacterial enzymes, doesn't denature our enzymes, hopefully. There is a chance if you get too high of a fever, like 105 degrees, that starts to denature our enzymes. And so if that's the case, then you go to the hospital and they try to cool you down, give you fever reducers, things like that. Iron and zinc go to the liver, and then the fever increases the metabolic rate, all because these white blood cells, these macrophages, encountered a pathogen and are trying to deal with it. So this has been Mr. Leo. Hopefully this has been informative, and hopefully you were able to follow it. Remember, your homework assignment is to go on LMS RenWeb and to give me 5 differences between bacteria and viruses. And as you can see, that'll help you understand our lecture a little bit better. So hopefully it was informative. Sorry it wasn't as coherent as I would like it to be, but that's just kind of how it is with remote education and children and people and everything like that. So thanks for watching, and I will see you on the flip side.